Fuzed from Exile, and this series will be about general clash chat. This will cover everything from updates to loot, to the general state of the game, to problems and possible solutions and everything in between. One thing that I've seen people complaining about a lot lately is the loot. The Town Hall 11 update hit, and for some reason a lot of people think that means farming is dead. That's a ridiculous notion. Farming is not dead. To illustrate that point, I'll be showing some recent farming videos in the background. They will be in no particular order, using no particular troop composition, but they will all have one thing in common, and that's loot. A few would even qualify as being part of a monster loot episode, but I'm going to put them here instead. Guys, farming is not dead. Sniping is dead, but sniping was always counterintuitive anyway. Well, no, not exactly. But unprotected town halls were always counterintuitive. I remember when I first started playing the game, and they gave those little tips in the beginning. And one of those tips is protect your town hall. And I thought that's the way you're supposed to play this game. But playing around within the game, I found a link to the forum. And on the forum, there was posted a lot of topics which were completely new to me. One of those such topics was farming. I learned the term farming from the forum, and the more I read about it, the more it started to make sense to me. So I started looking up some farming bases, and I saw the town hall on the outside of the walls, and I didn't understand why at first. I didn't really understand why they were doing this, because I had referred back to the point where in the beginning of the game it tells you protect your town hall. I even went as far as to post in a couple of threads telling people, hey, you're supposed to protect this building. I thought I was doing them a favor by explaining to them what I thought was a very simple, obvious part of the game that they were doing wrong. And that's when I learned about shielding. I started playing back in January of 2013. The game was still new back then, and people were just now starting to formulate these strategies. Sacrifice your town hall and your trophies, give up 1,000 golden elixir, and everything in your storages would be safe. Because 9 times out of 10, a sniper would come along, take the town hall, and not even try to take the rest of the loot. And that's how the game was played for over 3 years. Supercell decided to change that, and they did so in a huge way. Turning the town hall into a storage by itself would have brought a lot of them into the inside of the base. Supercell decided that's not good enough. They wanted to eradicate that mentality altogether. So they stopped awarding a shield to a town hall that had been simply sniped. In order to get a shield now, you have to have 30% of your base destroyed and 50% of maximum capacity army used. It's confusing though, because it's not 50% of the attacker's army. It's 50% of the defender's army capacity for whatever level town hall they have, with army camps and clan castle at maximum level, even if they aren't. That killed sniping. It didn't kill farming. It did, however, make your loot harder to keep. All of a sudden, you had to learn how to defend against an attack. For me, being a Town Hall 10 player who hit the upgrade to Town Hall 11 button the moment it was released, there was an immediate and profound elixir drought in the game. But that's because everybody was working on their Grand Warden. Since then, even elixir is not hard to farm. But for some reason that's not explained, people think that the only way you can get loot is with a war army now. There's nothing at all wrong with hitting with a war army, practicing for your war attacks, trying out new troop compositions, etc. But farming is about efficiency, and that means using cheap troops and minimizing spell usage as soon as possible. Supercell did decide that they wanted to make an adjustment and add some loot into the game. So they added the loot cart, which essentially is a 20% rebate on anything that's taken from us. They chose to do this over subtracting 20% from the loot that can be taken because they wanted people to get a good take from the base, but also because they wanted to get people back into the game. If you see the notification on your device that your village just got raided, then you also know that you now have a loot cart to collect. If the loot cart is at maximum capacity, you're throwing loot away by not collecting it. And people know this, so they get back on the game to collect their loot cart. So of course they sign onto the game, and if their camps are full, guess what? They're gonna attack. This serves to balance the fact that we can now attack through our shields. Although we can ride a shield, Supercell's given us an incentive not to. Supercell, here's an idea. The next time you want to inject loot into the game, just do this. Increase the loot that we get for our war attacks. Not the win bonus, but the loot that you actually get when you hit the base. Right now those numbers are pretty low. It'd be nice to be able to at least recoup the cost of your army. Supercell is very good about balance. Not everything is balanced, but things are always being tweaked, and a lot of thought goes into the adjustments that are made. Guys, Supercell has said very publicly that they want this game to survive for years into the future. And despite what some people think, they're not going to sacrifice anything in this game in order to work on Clash Royale. Supercell gets their name from the fact that their development teams are just that, individual teams that work in cells, and each cell works on only one game. The Clash Royale team can do whatever they want, and it will never do anything to set back the Clash of Clans team. I've been playing Clash Royale, it's a fun game, but it's completely different from Clash of Clans, and it's not going to be taking its place anytime soon. As long as Clash of Clans continues to make money, and believe me, it is, Supercell is going to continue developing it. There's a lot of life in it, and there's a lot of potential for it to grow. There's another update coming that should be announced very soon. Supercell has uncharacteristically given us a sneak peek of the update, even though we're not looking at sneak peeks yet. What we know so far is that at least part of this update is going to be very focused on war. More specifically, war matchmaking. A lot of times your clan may match up against another clan, and at face value, it looks like you have no chance at beating them because that other clan is way more advanced than you are. And sometimes they are, but a lot of time it's just perception. A lot of times I'll get crapped out if I look at my mirror and he's got maxed out heroes while mine are just mid-level. But heroes don't compare directly to one another in matchmaking. Everything adds a certain weight, whether it's offense or defense, it adds weight in one direction or the other, or in some cases both. There's a magical formula, a number which we'll call a war rating. They don't tell us the specifics of how the formula works, but they do tell us a few things which hold more weight than others. We do know that heroes add to your offensive weight as well as your defensive weight. Another thing that weighs very heavily toward defensive weight is walls. Your walls, your defenses, and your heroes all add up to a cumulative defensive war rating. And it's this final number that's used to determine a match. So sometimes it may seem like, hey, this other guy has heroes that are way higher than mine, but you've got an advantage somewhere else there in the base. It makes you a lot closer than you realize, even if you don't see it. Supercell has told us about some pretty big changes that are coming to matchmaking. They really are working hard to make war as fair as possible. Currently, defense weighs a lot more heavily than offense. That has created within the game a phenomenon of 0.5 bases. For example, an 8.5 would be somebody who fully maxes out Town Hall 8, moves on to Town Hall 9, but doesn't touch the defenses until offenses are completely maxed, including army camps, spell factory, lab, and all troop and spell levels. Since they don't have expos and they have Town Hall 8 level defenses, chances are they're going to match up with someone in war who's a Town Hall 8. Their base is going to be a challenge for that Town Hall 8, but they get to hit them like a Town Hall 9. One surprising detail though about the upcoming matchmaking changes is that offense is actually going to be weighed even less than it is now. On face value, it seems like this would further incentivize people to go the route of the 0.5. But then you get to this point. Team versus team compositional checks have been added to help weed out imbalanced war matchups. What that sounds like to me is that they're trying to further fine-tune these bases so that the 0.5s no longer have an advantage. They're probably going to be more likely now to be matched up with other 0.5s. And that goes for defenseless bases as well. It'll be very curious to see how they play out in the new Clash to come. And a defenseless base, of course, is one with no defenses beyond the initial cannon, which everyone has when they start. When you bring a defenseless base into war, you know you're getting 3-starred. And since walls count so highly toward defensive weight, a lot of people don't even build walls on their defenseless bases. You know you're getting 3-starred, but the idea is it's going to help the clan attract an easier target in war matchmaking. But not only that, since offense is maxed, you're able to hit much higher, possibly getting 6 stars out of this war, even though you're only giving up 3. They haven't given us any details on how these additional base-to-base compositional checks are going to work, but they've specifically said that the reason for doing this is to help combat against engineered clan wars. So 0.5 bases and defenseless bases may be a thing, but it'll be interesting to see if they get paired up against other defenseless bases and 0.5 bases. And if they do, there's no more advantage to doing it. Now, with all of these changes to come, we're going to really be reducing the pool of people from which we're able to pull a match. In order to help populate that pool back up again, they're eliminating 35 versus 35 and 45 versus 45 wars. Ultimately, matching up for war is probably going to take a lot longer, but this is going to help alleviate some of that. Recent win-loss records are also going to be a factor. If you're in a clan who doesn't win very much, you're going to be matched up with another clan who doesn't win very much, ultimately giving one of those clans a morale boost. Now, Supercell hasn't given us any more details about the update, but there have been some additional details leaked to the public. Whenever it seems that an update must be near, there's a fever in the game and on the forum, and it never fails. Ever since the one initial legitimate leak that there really was about the update, every single time an update seems to be due, additional fake leaks appear now. So if you see a post from Anushka discussing the details of an so far undisclosed update, that's a fake. That's not a real post. It happened once, but it's not going to happen every single update. However, there is one guy who has been able to discover some legitimate information. He figured out how to gain access to Supercell's practice server and examine the data within. This guy's name is spAnser, and if you want more detail on how he was able to do this, check out episode 61 of the ClashCast podcast, which can be found on iTunes. I'll also put a link in the description for you. So this guy spAnser combs through Supercell's code and he finds bits of things that are changed, and he uses that to learn what might be coming up later in the game. His track record so far has been outstanding. When he says something's happening, it happens. But one thing he freely admits is that just because something is being tested in the game, that doesn't mean it's going to make it to a final build of the game. Supercell takes this seriously enough that they have permabanned his 2 known accounts in the game. He's not shy about saying that he still plays the game, but he won't tell us what his current accounts are. And you can't blame the guy for that. So what's he discovered this time around? Well, it looks like we're going to be getting level 7 goblins and level 6 hogs. He also tells us that there are placeholders in the game for 2 new troops that each have a new Dark Barracks level associated with them. One of those troops is a Rocketeer, and another one is something called a Zap Wizard, which seems to just be a temporary name for now. It also looks like healers may be getting nerfed again. So badly, in fact, that the war community has to express so much concern on the forum and social media that Supercell has uncharacteristically responded to it. They tell us nothing's decided for sure, we don't know what's going to happen, we're constantly testing changes in the game, and a lot of these changes don't ever make it into the game. I'd like to see Queen Walk and Super Queen remain in the game because they add dimension to some of the attacks. I've never been a big fan of nerfs, but it seems like every time something works and works well enough to become popular, that people cry for it to be nerfed. I prefer to see balance come to the game in some other capacity. But we don't know what dynamic these new troops will be bringing to the game, and for that reason, I reserve judgment. Another thing that has been uncovered is it looks like skeletons are going to no longer trigger traps. Now, you might be thinking, hold on, wait a second, why would they do that? Witches are so overpowered right now that why would they possibly do anything to make them stronger? But the way the witches are now, the skeletons rush ahead and trigger the traps before the witches even get there. The witches aren't dying, so the skeletons trip the traps, the witches spawn new skeletons, and the cycle continues. And that means if the skeletons don't trip the traps, a lot more witches are going to be dying from them. Hey, but you've seen my replays. I, as well as most of the Town Hall 11s in my clan, have been using mass witch attacks. We call it the Flood. And if we're using 95% of our attacks at one Town Hall level on one troop, it probably is overpowered. But that's okay, this game is fluid. It's constantly evolving and adapting. We'll survive, we'll adapt, we'll move on to whatever comes next. And that's really what this video is about. It's just a rant to rant against the rants. Hopefully we can all keep an open mind for a while and reserve judgment until we've actually experienced these changes. And if you're one of those people who thinks farming is dead, think again and adjust your game. Farming is alive and well in all leagues. There are many ways to farm, and none of them are wrong. Whether you prefer to drop down into a lower league, dropping handfuls of troops at a time, or climbing up into a higher league and going for storages, other people are doing it, and if they can do it, you can too. If whatever you're doing now isn't working, try something different. Whether that be Barch, Balloonian, Goblins, or some other combination, find what works for you and do that. Until next time, like always, thanks for watching.